cover as opposed to a more well-canopied neighborhood. And that really can show up in this case as a nearly 15-degree temperature difference. So really, for some people in our communities, the difference between life and death. And because of climate change, we are anticipating the number of 95 or higher degree days is going to be increasing, and already is increasing significantly. So in the period of years between 1970 and 1999, there were on average about 5 days of 95 degrees and higher. Around 2040, that's going to be more like 35 days per year at 95 degrees and higher, and that will continue to rise. So these are pretty serious impacts we're talking about. And that shade cover that trees can provide can be a meaningful difference in how people feel that and experience that. So we know there's a lot of work to be done. We know that we really need a holistic approach to urban forestry for it to be effective, and we know we need our whole community to get engaged with that. So the park people, we've been kind of refining our kind of mental model for how our urban forestry work needs to look. We know that we need our urban forest to be addressing multiple needs. Our communities have a lot of needs, and trees, you'll see those bumper stickers that say trees are the answer, and of course they're not the only answer. We need to be moving on lots of other fronts to be, addressing climate change and all the other things, but they're an important piece of the solution, and they provide such a variety of benefits to our communities that they really are powerful. And my biggest challenge is that I want to talk about them all, and that can just be too much sometimes. But we need to be actively planting all elements of our urban forest. So we need to be planting park trees, planting the public right-of-way trees, the street trees that line our city streets. We need to be planting on private property as well. And this is an interesting challenge that the park people fills a kind of specific niche for, because the city has a wonderful free tree planting program as well, but they can't touch private property. And it's actually it's more than 80% of Denver's trees and of the additional plantable spaces that are on private property. So we really cannot ignore that piece of the puzzle. And that also means that everyday residents on the ground really need to be engaged and bought in and understand the value of trees, and that we need to figure out the ways that they can engage with urban forestry on their own private property. And even the street trees that are technically owned by the city are the responsibility of the adjacent property owners here in our Wild West piece of the small government communities. And that also means that it's everyday residents on the ground. My Kentucky coffee tree that's in my public right-of-way space is owned by the city, but I'm responsible for the care of that tree. That we need to figure out another reason why they can engage with urban forestry. We need to be proactively planting, and even the street trees, pretty aggressively large numbers of trees owned by the city, we cannot ignore the responsibility tremendous value of our existing canopy in our Wild West, because every tree in Denver is on life support, and that also means making sure that they're getting the inputs of care. My Kentucky coffee tree that's in my public right-of-way space is owned by the city, but I'm responsible for the care of that tree. Sadly, it does take a little bit of time for trees to grow, so the new ones, it'll take a decade or two for them to really start coming out those pretty aggressively large numbers of trees owned by the city. We also need to be planting at tremendous value of our existing very proactively and aggressively, because every tree in Denver is on life support, to get beyond that, so to keep making sure that they're getting the inputs of care. And then we need to putting my Kentucky coffee tree that's in my public right-of-way space is owned by the city, but I'm responsible for the care. Sadly, it does take a little bit of time for trees to grow, so the new one where we face the biggest tree neck, we need to be proactively start planting out those pretty aggressively large numbers of trees owned by the city. We also need to be planting at tremendous value, really very proactively and aggressively, because every tree in Denver is on life support, to get beyond that, so our whole ensure that they're getting the inputs of care. And then we need to putting my Kentucky coffee tree that's in my right-of-way space is owned by the city, but I'm responsible for the care. Sadly, it does take a little bit of time for trees to grow, so the new one where we face the biggest tree neck, we need to be proactively start planting out those pretty aggressively large numbers of trees owned by the city. We also need to be planting at tremendous value, really very proactively and aggressively, because every tree in Denver is on life support, to get beyond that, so our whole ensure that they're getting the inputs of care. And then we need to putting my Kentucky coffee tree that's in my right-of-way space is owned by the city, but I'm responsible Sadly, it does take a little time to figure out the new one where we face the biggest tree for the decade to proactively planting the pretty smaller scale, plant trees. And we also need to be planting at like very proactive, aggressive, because every tree and buildings all know that to get beyond of our whole of our residents and I putting my city trees on private space owned by the city, but I and sadly it does take a little time to figure out the new one where we face the biggest tree for the decade to proactively planting the pretty smaller scale plant trees. And we also need to be planting at like very proactive, aggressive, because every tree and buildings all know that to get beyond of our whole of our residents and I putting my started private neighborhoods by wonderful, and for sadly it does take a little time to new one where we face trees are really expensive. We need more trees proactively planting the red monkey scale plant trees in our neighborhoods. We also need to be planting at like that she would get very proactive because every tree and buildings all know starting at west of our whole, but other neighborhoods starting putting my started Waddington in on by one out in the park for sadly it does take a little time the city with our new ones to expand. It's really citywide. We need more trees proactively and street red monkey spring trees in our neighborhoods. And for a long time we're just doing street trees, then we're hearing here from other neighbors because every tree saying, oh gosh, you know, we don't have that much space, but other neighborhoods starting to my neighborhood Waddington in on by one out in the park and over the years our program in the city with our new ones to expand. It's really citywide. We need more trees who value trees and who want to be able to participate. So a tree that would usually cost $150 or more is distributed for $35 in any Denver neighborhood, for $10 in our low canopy neighborhoods, and then for free for anybody who faces financial hardship. We don't want cost to be a barrier for anybody. So the goals of the program are really make trees accessible for everybody. Cost should not be a barrier. We don't want any knowledge barriers to trees. People get intimidated about planting a tree, but we like to make sure that that's really doable. We also don't want anybody who has a physical limitation to not be able to participate in the program, because through Denver Digs, you plant your own tree. But for folks who have a physical limitation, we find volunteers who can deliver and plant your tree for you. So a big goal, of course, as we spoke to earlier, is to decrease the tree equity gap. So we've got 28 focused neighborhoods where tree cover is really low. We do a lot of our extra partnership building, a lot of our on-the-ground canvassing, and most of our relationship building in these low canopy neighborhoods where we really want to see more trees planted. I'm going to go back really briefly here. So we want to decrease that tree equity gap. We also focus the program on species diversity, so really trying to plant a diverse forest so that it's less vulnerable to things like the emerald ash borer. We don't want to see one pest take out 15% of the tree canopy cover in the future. We are focusing on large trees to maximize those benefits, and we do provide small trees where the big ones won't fit, but we really want to see long-lived trees that will serve us for many, many, many decades. And then we know that by engaging the community, we really have the best chance at ensuring survival. So that's why we charge a little bit of money where money's not a barrier, and also have residents plant their own trees, because we know a little bit of sweat equity, a little bit of that dollar investment will increase a sense of ownership and stewardship of those trees. And then we want to support residents through their stewardship as well. So we provide a tree care hotline and seasonal tree care reminders, that kind of good stuff. But Denver Digs Trees has become this really wonderful annual community tradition and way that neighbors organize themselves to help encourage each other to plant every year. And these are some of our planting crews going out and planting for folks who need the help there. This is a picture of a 25-year-old Denver Digs tree over in the Cole neighborhood. Nikki Montoya here planted it, dragged her 2 kids to go pick up her tree at a nearby park site and planted it. And she speaks really eloquently of having grown up in that house and how the summers would just be so hot, but her hackberry tree provides wonderful shade cover, and that she sees neighbors stop under its shade, kids play out there. And during times of violence in the Cole neighborhood and different cycles and activity happening in her neighborhood, her tree was her way of saying, I have my eyes on my neighborhood. I care about what goes on here. And she's helped neighbors up and down High Street there plant Denver Digs trees over the years. Another program that we have is our Mile High Tree Champions program. Oh, I should say, actually, Denver Digs Trees applications come to a close on Wednesday of this week. So if you know anybody who needs a tree, please direct them to our website right away. And even after that deadline, we'll take a wait list of trees because we usually have to deny some applications because they don't have space. So we have a pretty good wait list. You get a high likelihood of getting a tree. And then we'll distribute those in April. So our Mile High Tree Champions program is basically our way of engaging with corporate and other groups in planting trees at single sites like parks or affordable housing communities or nonprofit headquarters. So any place that needs 15 or more trees, we are happy to consider and see if it's a good site for one of these sponsored plantings. And basically the corporate group comes in, provides the dollars, and also their team members. So it's a team building, morale building thing for their employees. Sometimes we bring out residents who live at the sites to plant alongside them. They also kind of can get some PR for doing a little bit of community give back. And it's a good way for us to ensure financially sustainable planting projects as well. So if you know of a site that needs trees or a group that would like to sponsor and staff a tree planting project, please get in touch with us. Now, the Park People really depends on volunteers. We have a very small staff. 3 years ago, we were a staff of 2.5. We have since grown and hopefully will continue to grow so that we can grow our impact. We're 8 right now. But we really rely on the power of volunteers, and we have hundreds of volunteers engage with us every year. A lot of that's through our Denver Digs Trees program, so we have a bunch of great volunteer opportunities coming up in April. But really all aspects of our work, it's volunteers who are bringing the people power to make our work possible. We have a community forester training series. Registrations actually begin this week. And this is a great multi-workshop training that provides some basics on tree biology, the benefits and the myths about trees, planting and health, pruning, identification, and that also ends in a leadership training so that we can increase the capacity of our volunteers to lead more volunteers, and also covers an element of community engagement. Because we work in low canopy neighborhoods where sometimes we're working across lines of difference, it's really important for us to be very intentional and thoughtful in how we build those relationships that support good dynamics between our organization and our volunteers and residents on the ground. We've, in recent years, expanded our community forester program and Denver Digs to a degree to really do neighborhood scale and block scale greening projects where we're really taking community visions and desires for their neighborhoods and trying to come as technical experts and project facilitators to help them realize their visions for their neighborhood's greening efforts. And this is our really intentional, focused effort to counter some of the bad dynamics that have happened in the past where neighborhoods have things happen to them and don't have much of a voice or a say in that process. So we've been building our toolkit for how we can be good partners to community. We also have a Park Legacy program. We facilitate the planting of tribute, memorial, and celebration trees in the Denver Park. So that's kind of a really special one that hits home to a lot of people and leaves kind of a special way that people, gives an opportunity for a special way people connect to our parks and to our forest. And then just this past year, we piloted a brand new urban forestry workforce development program. Really trying to recognize that our organization alone cannot plant and care for all the trees needed now or into the future. not even just Denver Parks and Rec and their forestry office can. We really need all of the tree care businesses, all the municipalities to be well staffed with the employees who can do the hard planting and care work that our communities need going into the future. So we want more trees planted. We need the people. The companies need the workers. There's a big labor shortage in the tree care sector, both the municipal side and the private business side. And we know that these can be really meaningful, well-paying, family supporting jobs for people who are underemployed or unemployed. And so we were really excited to pilot the Tree Force program this past fall, this 8-week pre-apprenticeship program we spent the last year developing and structuring, that's really robust. And in our pilot years here, we're working with recently incarcerated adults to prepare them for jobs in urban forestry. That's been a long-held dream that has been so exciting to realize. So I'll kind of try to wrap it up here. I wanted to leave with this quote. This is from Gertie Grant, the founder of our Denver Digs Trees program. She said, people, through community forestry work, people get connected to the earth, and they get connected to their neighborhood, and they get connected to each other. And it's that community building process that strengthens neighborhoods and strengthens the city. And I find that so powerful because I know that, a lot of these issues are daunting and big and can be discouraging. But this always reminds me of the really powerful community building that urban forestry work has the potential for. And kind of like the Mr. Rogers quote of like, in times that are tough or when things feel scary, look for the helpers. And I know I feel inspired all the time when I get to work with volunteers day in and out, and the partners that we work with. It's always a really important point of building hope and building connection that builds my resilience, I know. And I think in times, I didn't write this one down, but there's another, I think there's a Zen Buddhist nun, sister, I'm going to forget her name now. It's in my notes. But there's this amazing nun who says in times when hope is gone too, you can work from an amazing place of love. And so I think that the connection that you can build with others can just be so motivating and powerful. Okay, so I'll just wrap up by saying it's been such a joy to be with you here this morning. Thanks for muddling through my tech issues with me. But I'd certainly welcome anybody to get engaged with our organization. You can visit our website to sign up for our newsletter, to sign up to volunteer. We've got a lot of great volunteer opportunities and that community forester training coming up. And then, of course, we're a nonprofit organization, so always appreciate donations that support our work as well. But I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Kim, so much for coming. So the Green Team is really wanting to support people in volunteering for the tree planting again. We did it last spring, and I know that there's some issues around the timing of when the slots to volunteer become available earlier than the tree planting itself. And so I wonder if you could say a little bit about the timing of that and the best way for people to get alerted to those openings.
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. And you're speaking to just that like planting will happen, the volunteer opportunities around planting will happen in April, but the signups are well in advance of that. Yes, so probably the safest thing to do is for anybody who's interested in potentially volunteering on an ongoing-ish basis, you can sign up to become a volunteer through our website. We have an application form, which really just gets you on a listserv to receive the notices as soon as those opportunities are available. But second to that, if you don't want to be on an ongoing listserv, which I would totally get, it's great to email our community engagement coordinator to plug in and say, oh, I'd like to volunteer, and I'd like to be on one of your digger crews planting trees for folks and things like that. And we can get you on the right list so that when assignments start to be put together and when the volunteer training for planting happens, you can be on that list. Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Kim. Do you do anything outside of Denver County?
Thanks so much for that question. The bulk of our work really is City and County of Denver, but we are, for certain kinds of activities, able to go outside of the city bounds. So, for example, our Mile High Tree Champions program, if there are planting sites that need a corporate group to go plant there, then we can potentially explore that. We have to be in touch with the municipality that it falls under and make sure we're doing everything they want us to do to be in compliance with them. But there is opportunity to do that. And I will say we're part of some really exciting dialogues right now with a bunch of other Front Range entities, and most of them, I think, we always think of ourselves as so small. A lot of communities don't have a tree planting nonprofit at all, but we're really in discussions with other cities and private tree care businesses and other types of nonprofits around how we expand our urban forestry work in the coming years, because we all know there's just a necessity for all of our communities to be expanding the planting and care of trees. And so we're trying to dialogue to figure out how we all build each other up, work in partnership with one another and across boundaries to help do that. Thanks for that question. Oh, and I should say too that our Denver Digs Trees program, folks who can apply for that are only within the City and County of Denver, but we do have a tree sale, an Earth Day tree sale that's held in conjunction with the main distribution. So this year, April 22nd, Earth Day, anybody from the metro area can come and shop that sale, and there's still really good deals on trees, actually.
I just curious whether you get support from the Denver Water Board on their guidelines about what to water and everything like that.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we were really pleased to get a wonderful grant this year and are so grateful for that. That's supporting our Denver Digs Trees program and Tree Force and some of our other activities. And then we're engaging in some exciting dialogues with Denver Water, with the Colorado Water Conservation Board, with the Climate Office, with Denver Parks and Recreation around water topics, because we know it's at that nexus. That's such a sensitive and tricky spot about how we communicate best with residents, how we support the conversion to more xeric landscapes and also support our trees. And so I'm really excited about the dialogues we're going to be having coming up. Thanks for that.
Is there any financial help for people in low-income neighborhoods? Because tree maintenance can be thousands of dollars in one season. And I've noticed, compared to other urban areas I've lived in, that older trees in Denver do not seem to receive the same level of care as in some other cities. They seem to really have lots of broken branches, even in mild storms. They haven't been trimmed, that sort of thing. So how can people get help if they need it, or is there any available?
It's such an important question. And I know years ago, I started with the park people around 2009, and I think sometime around that time, there were actually community development block grant funds that helped with financial relief for lower income folks to pay for, I think, trimming and removal, and that went away after the, I think, 2008 recession. And so there's still a real gap and a need on that front. I know that the city has payment plans for tree care services, so the city will help someone kind of get on a payment plan, but really that expense is so significant. So I know that there are dialogues going on around how can we better support residents. I also believe that we're checking on what the current status of the program is. Habitat for Humanity actually had a program related to supporting costs, these really extreme costs when it comes to trees in some cases, but it's very specific to folks who can be eligible for habitat programming. So that's one area where the park people and our partners at the Nature Conservancy and some other entities are really talking about how can we get the funding community really on board with the real needs because of that cost burden. I am happy the I'm sorry, not the climate tax, the park tax, the dedicated park legacy fund that was created with the city 2018, I want to say. They've got a focused neighborhoods program wherein they can put some resources towards tree trimming and tree removal. It is in very discrete areas, and they are low income neighborhoods. It's not like in all of the low income neighborhoods, though. So I think there's still definitely more that can be done on that. Thanks.
Another question, Kim. Last year, I think it was, I went on the website to sign up as a volunteer, and it may have changed, but there was some language on there that says if you do volunteer, Denver Digs plants trees, rain, shine, sleet, or snow. In other words, be there or be square.
It's true. It's true. We're a hardcore operation, and we do safety is super important. So in a couple instances where it's like, no, this is super dangerous, we'll call something off. But we have found over the years, over the 40 years that Denver Digs operated, in the years when they tried canceling the program, it meant hundreds of trees didn't have homes in some cases. So we avoid that at almost all costs because it has some really dramatic impacts. And I think we did, I want to say it was just prior to me coming on, at one point cancel a distribution, and I got to see what that looked like. And so it's with good reason. But our crew is a hardcore set of folks. Yeah. Thanks for that question. And that said, we like to provide volunteer opportunities for all people. And if being that hardcore doesn't quite match your needs and stuff, that's okay. We have office volunteers and social media volunteers and just a full range of the ways that we use help. So thanks for that.
So I'm curious, like, how you select the species of trees that are planted, because I know, like, even with trees, that sometimes there can be unintended impacts of planting non-native species. So
Yeah.
what does that process look like?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good question because we really don't have that many choices when it comes to natives as much as we would like to plant natives. So I know we have big-tooth maples and western hackberries and maybe one other or two other natives, but the vast majority are not. And so we do, and all of our tree species are signed off by the city forester who sits on our urban forestry committee, so really close relationship there. We are going for tried and true winners that have proved over the many decades that they do well. None of the species we plant actually get weedy. Like we don't do Siberian elms or tree of heaven and some of those other super weedy species. And Denver's just a harsh enough climate where a lot of things can't get too weedy on the tree front. But we're really looking for arid tolerant, urban tolerant trees and where we can, ones that do kind of have a rich food web hosting quality to them, like a lot of the oaks can provide just really rich habitat for a wide variety of species. And then where possible, where we can plant natives, we definitely like to see that for sure, because that brings all kinds of other benefits to it. So yeah, thanks for that question.
Sorry, just real quick. I know that there have been these waves like where all the chestnuts were lost or all the elms were lost. Do you ever go back and start planting those again, or is that risky? I know there are some movements to plant chestnuts again, and I don't know what you feel about that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've never heard any talk of planting chestnuts in Denver, but I know with elms, like Dutch elm disease came through. There are a lot of disease-resistant varieties of elms that we plant now. So definitely, and they're wonderful trees in so many ways and bring so many benefits. So where possible, definitely like to bring those back and just have a really diverse palette to begin with anyway. So when people say, what would you plant if you could? I have some of my favorites, but really for the whole forest view, we want diversity across the board.
Thank you so much, Kim, for being here and for all of this fabulous information. Thank you all for being here this morning. And as always, please join us at 10:30 for our choral Eucharist in the cathedral and online at sjcathedral.org. And join us next week for Dr. Bonnie Clark and talking about her book about the Amachi Japanese internment camp, Japanese American internment camp. Her book is called Finding Solace in the Soil, and we will have some giveaway copies. So, Kim, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks so much, everybody.